10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 442. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 442, month 2 of 2025. Hard to believe it's going by so fast. But new month, you know what that means, new series. And this month I'm really excited because we're going to be tackling something that's a little bit more open. And the topic that we are going to address is one of density. So let's talk about it for a minute, as we usually do in our first episode of the month, to kind of get a handle on the direction that we're going to be going and what this is going to be all about. So I want you to think about for a second what that word brings to mind when I say it as relates to jazz solos. What does density mean to you? If you think about your own soloing or solos of some of your favorite musicians, the people you want to sound like, how dense is their playing? How do they handle that? Is it one-dimensional, where they're always sort of playing with a certain density that's kind of part of their sound? Do they switch up their density of playing and start to put a little bit of a definition around what that means to you personally going into this series? Because you want to be thinking about that. And I'm going to give you, obviously, a bunch of exercises that I think are going to help you. But this brings me to the fact that when we study jazz, there are a lot of topics that we can cover with very, very, very clear instructions and a very, very clear path forward, so that when you go into the practice room, you're like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. I've got to sort of like check these things off the list. I've got to make sure I meet these requirements and I'm good to go. And then there are other concepts that are much, much less clear cut, meaning that it's much harder to decide whether you're getting better at this or not, whether you should keep working on it or whether you've worked on it enough and maybe you should pivot to something else. It's really, really tricky. And I think that a lot of us, now this is myself included, I find comfort in measurable stuff, right? Where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get this specific phrase up to this specific tempo. And that's really my goal. So I just go into the practice room and I do what it takes. It take as long as I need to accomplish that very specific thing. This needs to be at 250 BPM. Basically, I don't stop until it's there. And because I find a lot of comfort in that, one thing that I've struggled with over the years, that I'm happy to say I've gotten a lot more comfortable with, is more open-ended stuff. So throwing around a term like density, and then when you're in the practice room, basically your only task is to explore that concept. Now that's much, much, much more open-ended work. And it can feel a little bit scary because you don't know how to measure yourself. Am I doing this well? Am I making progress? Well, I don't know. So my first message to you this month is that I'm going to do my best. And I think one of the things that I've been trying to think about as a teacher is how to give you concrete beginnings to these very open-ended topics, to give you concrete prompts to help you down this path that maybe if it was open-ended right from the very beginning and I couldn't give you something specific to work on, maybe you just never work on this stuff because it's too intimidating. It's too open-ended. So I just wanted to put that out there. You have to realize that in order to develop basically a complete skill set to be as free of a musician as you want, which I always come back to, I think that's the biggest thing for an improviser, is just to be as free with your expression as you possibly can. You've got to do a lot of really specific things where the goal is clear, the progress is measurable, but you do have to do a lot of work that might be a little bit scarier for you, which is this more open-ended work. You just kind of have to have faith that your consistency is going to eventually, over the course of long periods of time, pay off. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you get discouraged with this kind of stuff, because I'm not going to lie to you and say that you'll never feel discouraged and that your graph will be just this nice clean line going up. Unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. Music doesn't work that way. So just keep that in mind, that I understand this is not as measurable, but please, please stick with it. Okay, so now let's dive into the actual exercise that I want to present to you to get started with this. So we already said that density can mean a lot of different things, right? It's sort of a fuzzy definition, but let's start with one just sort of really clear way of looking at it. And we're going to think about it as how much of the bar you're filling up, right? So basically, if one measure of music lasts for, let's say, 3 seconds, how much of that actual time are you playing versus not playing? And that's the first angle that we want to start to discover thinking about density through. So this is an extremely simple exercise to explain, but when you actually go to do it, I think this is going to make you feel a lot of feelings. It's going to make you question some stuff for sure. So just be aware of that. Like, oh, the instructions. Oh, okay. He could explain that to me in 30 seconds. But when you actually go to do it, I mean, you're going to have a whole world of things that you're going to feel and realize. And that's the whole point. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to focus on a particular tune this week. And the tune that we're going to use is Recordame. I feel like this is a great one because it has, these big open sections in terms of chords at the beginning, and then we have more dense chords. So not only are you going to be thinking about like what you're playing in the bar, but you're going to have to deal with two sort of different styles of harmony, like a real modal one and then a real tonal one at the end. But basically, the instruction is you're going to have 2 assignments this week. The first one is that you're going to go through this progression. And for multiple choruses, you're only allowed to play 1 note per bar. Now, the value of that note can be whatever you want, okay? You could play a whole note, you could play a quarter note, you could play an eighth note, but you can only play 1 note per bar. That's the only requirement, okay? Now, this is just going to sort of hit you over the head with density and thinking about density, because if you're only playing 1 note per bar, and you're not just playing whole notes in every single measure, wow, there's going to be a lot of empty space there, right? So you're just going to sort of start to have to think about what it sounds like to play with a very limited density when you're only playing 1 note a bar. Because if you do play whole notes and dotted half notes in every bar, that's going to get boring real quick. So then you're going to have to explore what it feels like to play shorter notes, which results in less density of sound and more silence. Okay. So that's the first assignment. And then the second assignment is we're going to play 2 notes per bar. That's it. But you're limited to 2 notes. And this one, what you're going to notice is that it exponentially increases the depth of the exercise when we introduce that second note. The world of options really, really opens up to us, okay? So what this does is it actually requires you to think, okay? And that's what we want to do. We want to present you with something at first that's really, really, really going to challenge you to do a very, very specific thing and really struggle through doing that specific thing. Like when you get to 2 notes per measure, you may be, if you've never done anything like this before, you might be thinking to yourself like, wait, did I play 2 notes in that bar? Or was it only 1? Wait, did I cross the bar line? Oh no, did I accidentally just play 3 notes because I wasn't really thinking about it? You're really, really going to have to buckle down and make sure that you're following these instructions. And this is a really, really good thing. These restrictions are where all the gold is on the other side when we actually remove the restrictions, but we're not there yet. So what I'm going to do is I am going to provide you with a backing track for Recordame, and then I'm going to provide you with these trading tracks where I'm going to play a chorus using either 1 note per bar or 2 notes per bar, and then leave a chorus open for you, so that 2 things. You'll have the experience of doing it with somebody else. Like when I studied this type of stuff with a lot of teachers, we would obviously play together in the lessons. I just want to recreate that for you. It'll also give you a chorus to just kind of like rest your brain, hear somebody else doing it, and then get back into it. All right. So there's going to be tons of tools for everybody on the Patreon for this. But again, the instructions are insanely simple. 1 note per bar, 2 notes per bar. That's it. But I really want you to observe what this does to your playing to try to fit inside this box. Does it make you feel totally uncomfortable? Does it, on the other side of things, make you go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know it was possible that I could only play 1 note a bar and actually sound good? Wow, this is amazing. This has completely changed the way that I look at improvising. I can't believe I'm allowed to play 90% less than I normally do. Could have either one of those effects. I'm not really sure which effect it's going to have on you. But this type of work, I can tell you that it's done more for my overall playing, my overall ability to express myself freely, not get sort of shoved into a box where I feel like I have to play some certain kind of way. These types of exercises really open my mind and my musicality to a lot of possibilities. So don't take this stuff lightly. You guys know I've been moving in a direction that's more like these simple exercises that can be explored to any depth that we want to take them to. And more and more, I'm getting feedback from you guys that this stuff is really working for the people that actually do it. And this is the type of stuff that we really need to be doing, if I'm being honest, that is really going to actually improve your playing. Okay, so I'll finish off the episode with a little demonstration of me doing the 2 notes per bar thing. So you could just sort of hear an example of what that sounds like. If you want to get the trading tracks, the backing track, the instructions, the chord sheets for this tune, you can go over to our Patreon. If you're not sure what that is, if you're new to the show, we're a listener-supported podcast. You'll notice you didn't hear any advertisements on this show. That's because we rely on people like you to keep the show coming out, people that actually benefit from it. We do that in the form of a small monthly donation. And in return for that donation, you get all the tools and resources for every single episode. And this episode is no different. So if you want to support the show, you can go over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com and search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson podcast. Either way, you'll get all the information on how to support us and what your level of support gets you in return. And we look forward to having you over there. We've got a great community of jazz students, and we're adding to it all the time. Speaking of that, got to give a quick shout out to some new Patreon members this week. Thank you to Christian, John, Simone, Fabio, Aldo, and Olajide. Thank you so much for deciding to support this show, and I hope you're enjoying your resources. Of course, to the over 350 members that we have over there that have been supporting us for varying lengths of time, thank you. This show would not exist without you. So again, patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson podcast, or 10minutejazzlesson.com, and click on one of the Patreon banners. All right, here's a little playing over Recordame to bring us out. I hope you have fun this week with this assignment, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.